Welcome, welcome, welcome. I took a bit of a break right now. And I say a break, it's probably only been like 5 minutes just to drink some water because I've been talking for, I think, 2, 3 hours now. I've been talking a lot, so, well, mostly the reading part. So I'm just like, I'll take a bit of like a 5 minute break, drink a bit of water, watch a bit of YouTube, and then I'll continue on with the Bible. So here we are. Just taking a little break and continue on with Leviticus chapter 11. Oh man, this is actually I believe chapter 12 is going to be the longest chapter that I've actually read so far in the Bible. So let's just get started. And like again, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll continue on with this Leviticus chapter 11. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Get the following instructions to the people of Israel. Of all the land animals, these are the ones you may use for food. You may eat any animal that has complete split hooves and choose the cub. You may not, however, eat the following animals you have that have split hooves or chew cud, both and but not both. The camel chews cud, but does not have a split hooves, so it is ceremonial unclean for you. The hax chews cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The hare chews cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The pig is evenly split hooves, but does not chew cud, and it is unclean. You may not eat the meat of any of these animals or touch their carcasses. They are not ceremonial clean for you. Of all the marine animals, these are the ones that you may use for food. You may eat any of from the water, both that has fins and scales, whether it is from salt water or streams. But you may never eat animals from the sea or rivers, or do not have both fins or scales. They are distasteful to you. These apply both to little creatures that live in shallow waters and all creatures that live in deep water. They will always live in distasteful to you. You must never eat these meats or even touch their dead bodies. Any marine animal that does not have both fins or scales is distasteful to you. These are birds that are distasteful to you. You must never eat them. The griffo vulture, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, falcons of all kind, ravens of all kind, the eagle owl, a short-eared owl, the seagull, hawks of all kind, the little owl, the cormorant, and the great owl, the barn owl, the desert owl, and the Egyptian vulture, the stork, har- harms of all kind, or harems of all kind, the hoopet, and the bat. You must not eat winged insects that walk along the ground. They they are distasteful to you. You may eat, however, winged insects that walk along the ground that have jointed legs, so they can jump. These insects are permitted to eat, including all kinds of locusts, ball locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. All other insects that walk along the ground are distasteful to you. The following creatures that make you ceremonial unclean, if any of you touch their carcasses, you will be defiled until evening. If you pick up their carcasses, you may wash you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until evening. Any animal that has split hooves, or are not evenly divided or do not chew their cud is unclean for you. If you touch the carcass of such animal, you will be defiled. Of the animals that walk on all fours, those have that Those that have paws are unclean. If you touch their carcasses of such an animal, you will be defiled till evening. If you pick up a carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled till evening. These animals are unclean for you. Of the smallest animals that scurry along the ground, these are unclean for you: the mole rat, the rat, large lizards of all kinds, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the common lizard, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. All these such small are unclean for you. If any if any of you touch the dead bodies of such animal, such an animal, you will be defiled till evening. If such if such if such an animal falls into something, that is an object will be unclean. That object will be unclean. This is true whether the object is made from wood, cloth, leather, or burlap. Wherever it's used, you must dip it into water, and it will remain defiled till evening. After that, you will be ceremonial clean, and you may be used again. If such animal falls into your clay pot, everything in the pot will be defiled, and the pot must be smashed. If the water from such a container spills into any food, the food will be defiled, and any beverage in such container will be defiled. Any animal on which carcasses of in which of the carcasses which an animal falls to be defiled, it is an oven or a heather. It must be destroyed, for it is defiled, and you must treat it accordingly. However, if the carcass such as an animal falls into a spring or a charism, charism, oh man, excuse me, the water will still be clean, but anyone who touches the carcass will be defiled. If the carcass falls on seed grain to be planted for the feed, the seeds will still be considered clean. If if the seeds are still wet when the carcass falls onto it, the seeds will be defiled. If animals are permitted to eat dies and you touch their carcass, you will be defiled till evening. If you eat any of its meats or carry away its carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will be defiled till evening. All these animals that scurry along the ground are distasteful, are detestable. I think that's how you say it. I was saying distasteful or distable. Detestable. You must not never eat them. This includes all animals that slither along on their bellies, as well as those on with four legs, and those with many feet, such as animals that scurry along the ground that are detestable, and you must never eat them. They do not defile yourselves by touching them. You may never you may not make yourselves ceremonial unclean before them, for I am the Lord your God. You must construct yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. So do not defile yourselves with these small animals that scurry along the ground. For I am the Lord, and I am the one who brought you from the land of Egypt. That may be the God. Therefore, you must be holy, because I am holy. Ah, I had a brain stroke right there. that may be that might be your God. Therefore, I am holy. I am. For you must be holy. I am holy. I don't know why I'm having such struggle reading that part. These are the instructions regarding land animals, birds, marine animals, and animals that scurry along the ground. By these instructions, you will know what an unclean and clean, and which animals may be eaten and which may not be eaten. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. If woman becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son, she will be ceremonial unclean for 7 days, just as she has, just as she is unclean during the menstrual cycle. On the on the eighth day, the boy's foreskin must be circumcised. After waiting 33 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of the childbirth. During this time of purification, she must not touch anything that must be set apart as holy, and she must not enter the sanctuary till her time of purification is over. If the woman gives birth to a daughter, she will be ceremonially unclean for 2 weeks, just just as she is unclean during her menstrual period. After waiting 66 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of the child from childbirth. When the time of purification is complete for either the son or the daughter, the woman must bring a 1 year old lamb as a burnt offering and the young pigeon and turtle dove for purification offering. She must bring in offerings to the priest and the entrance of the terminants. The priest then will present them to the Lord to purify her. Then she said then she says she will be ceremonial clean again after her bleeding with childbirth at childbirth. These are the instructions for the women after childbirth and the sons. If the woman cannot afford to bring a lamb, she must bring two turtle doves or two young pigeons, one of them for a burnt offering and the other for the purification offering. These priests will sacrifice them to purify them, and she will be ceremonial clean. Oh man, not just thinking about that because I got two ideas on why the Lord is actually telling them this. So you're gonna have to wait until I finish with chapter 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "If anyone is swelling or rash or discolored skin, might not might develop into a serious skin disease. That person must be brought to Aaron and the priest or one of the sons. The priest will examine the afflicted area of skin. If the hair is affected, has turned white, then the problem appears to be more than skin deep. If it is a serious skin disease, then the priest who examines it must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. But if the afflicted area of the skin is only white discoloration and it does not appear to be more than just deep skin, then if the hair on the spot has not turned white, then the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest will make another examination. If he finds the afflicted person has not changed and the problem has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. On the seventh day, the priest will make another examination. If he finds the afflicted area has faded or has not spread, the priest may pronounce him ceremonial clean. If if it's only a rash, then the person's clothing must be washed and the person will be ceremonial clean. But if the rash continues to spread after the person is examined by the priest and has been pronounced clean, the affected person must return to be examined again. If the priest finds the rash has spread, he must pronounce them unclean, ceremonially unclean, for it is indeed a skin disease. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go to the priest for an examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin and some hair on the spot with turning white, then there's an open sore in the affected area. It is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce this person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, there's no need to be quarantined, for it is obvious that the skin is defiled by the disease. Now, suppose the disease has spread over the person's skins, covering it from head to foot. When the priest examines the affected person and finds the disease covers the entire body, he will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. Since the skin has turned completely white, the person is clean. But if any open sores appear, the person the afflicted person will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. The priest must take this pronouncement as soon as he sees an open sore, since open sores indicate that the person presents presence of a skin disease. However, if the open sores heal and turn white like the rest of the skin, then the person must return to the priest for another examination. If the afflicted areas have indeed turned white, then the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean by declaring, "You are clean." If anyone has a boil on the skin that started to heal, but the white swelling and reddish white spots develop on its place, the person must go to the priest to be examined. If the priest examines it and finds more than skin deep, and if it's hair that is affected and has turned white, the priest must pronounce this person ceremonially unclean. The boil has become a serious skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the afflicted area, the person the problem appears to be no more than skin deep and has faded. The priest must quarantine the person for 7 days. If during this time the afflicted area spreads to the skin, the priest must pronounce this person ceremonially unclean, because it is a serious disease. But if the area grows no larger and does not spread, it is merely the scar of a boil. The priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. If anyone suffered a burn on the skin and the burn area changes color, becoming either reddish white or shiny white, the priest must examine it. If he finds the hair in the afflicted area has turned white and the problem appears to be more than skin deep, the skin disease has broken out on the burn in the burn. The priest must then pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. Huh? Oh, I thought that was a bug. For it is clearly a skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair that is affect in the affected area, and the person appears to be no more than skin deep and has faded, the priest must quarantine the affected person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must examine the person again. If the affected area has spread on the skin, the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a serious skin disease. But if the affected area has not changed or spread on the skin and has faded, it is simply swelling from the burn. The priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean, for it is only a scar from the burn. If anyone, either a man or woman, has a sore on their head or chin, the priest must examine it, and if he finds more than skin deep and has a fine yellow hair on it, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. It is a scaby sore on the head or chin. If the priest examines the scaby sore and finds it only skin deep, but there is no black on it, he must quarantine the person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must examine the sore again. If he finds the scaby sore has not spread and there's no yellow on the hair on it and it appears to be only skin deep, the person must shave off all their hair except the hair in the afflicted area. Then the priest must quarantine the person for another 7 days. On the 7 days, he will examine the sore again. If if it is not spread and appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest pronounces the person ceremonially clean. The person's clothing must be washed, and the person must be ceremonially clean. But if the scabby sore begins to spread after the person has been pronounced clean, the priest must do another examination. And if he finds the sore has spread, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair. The affected person is ceremonially unclean. But if the color of the scaby sore does not change and black hair has grown on it, it is healed. The priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean. If anyone, either a man or a woman, has shiny white patches of skin, the priest must examine the afflicted area. If he finds a shiny patch on or only white pale, this is harmless skin rash, and the person is ceremonially clean. If a man loses his hair on his head and becomes bald, he is still ceremonially clean. And if he loses hair on his forehead, he he is simply has bald forehead. He has a bald forehead. He is still clean. However, if a reddish white sore appears on a bald spot on top of the head or the forehead, this is a skin disease. The priest must perform must exa- the priest must examine him, and if he finds swelling or reddish white sore around the man's head, and it looks like a skin disease, the man is indeed infected with a skin disease and is unclean. The priest must pronounce him ceremonially unclean because the sore is on his head. Those who suffer from serious skin disease may tear their clothing and leave their hair uncombed. This must be covered. They must cover their mouth and call out unclean, unclean. Uh, as long as it is a serious disease lasts, they will be ceremonially unclean. They must live in solitude in isolation. Why did I say solitude? Isolation in their place outside the camp. Now some now suppose mildew contaminates some woolen and linen cloth. Woolen woolen and linen fabric, the hide of the animal, or anything made from leather, if it is if the contaminated area is in the clothing, the animal hide, the fabric, or the leather article has turned greenish or reddish, it is contaminated with mildew, it must be shown to the priest. After examining the afflicted spot, the priest will put an article in quarantine for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must inspect it again. If the containment area has spread, the clothing the clothing or fabric or leather is clearly contaminated by a serious mildew, it is ceremonially unclean. The priest must burn the item and the clothing, the woven or the linen fabric or the piece of leather, for it has been contaminated with a serious mildew. It must be completely destroyed by fire. But if the priest examines it and finds the contaminated area has not spread in the clothing, the fabric, or the leather, the priest will order the object and to be washed and in quarantine for 7 more days. Then the priest will examine it again. If he finds the contaminated area has not changed cooler color after being washed, even if it did not spread, the object is defiled and it must be completely burnt up, whether the contaminated spot is on the inside or outside. But if the priest examines and finds that the contaminated area has faded after being washed, he must cut the spot from the cloth or fabric or leather. If the spot later reappears on the cloth, fabric, or leather article, the mildew is clearly spreading and the contaminated object must be burnt up. But if this spot disappears from the clothing, fabric, or a leather article after it's been washed, it must be washed again, then it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with mildew that contains woolen and linen fabric, cloth, um, clothing or fabric, or anything made of leather. This is how the priest will determine whether the items are ceremonially clean or unclean. Uh, even though that was the longest I've actually read, it's only 25. It's only been 25 minutes. Huh. Oh man. Now I know a lot of that came out and it all sounds like weird gibberish coming from God right there. But when you actually think about it, what he's saying here when it comes to eating the meat of some animals and what's going on is he's actually protecting the people of Israel from diseases. I know that might seem weird, but you gotta remember, like, what happens if your clothes are contaminated? Because back then, clothes weren't just something like back then, contamination on your clothes, like from mold and stuff, you couldn't just get bleach or something and just wash it off. No, you couldn't just do that. You couldn't just go to a freaking Walmart or something and just get a cleaning supplies and just wash off the clothes. Yeah, so when I was reading that whole part, I was like, wow, it sounds like God is telling them like, hey, there are diseases that you can't see and will not understand for a while of what diseases are. I'll tell you what some of these diseases are, but many of you don't have any cures for these diseases or how to prevent them. So he's basically showing them that he's basically still giving control to the people and giving authority to them. And he's still showing them that there's some things that he's not going to do for us all the time. He's not going to be babying us around for the rest of our lives. I mean, sure, he's going to be there hovering over us, telling us things like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But he's going to be there just basically walking you around, but he's not going to be there babying you all your life. Yeah, he'll be carrying your hand, but if something comes up to you and you must do it, then there you go. And then when it comes to the animals, well, many of the animals that he listed are actually very dangerous to eat back then because, well, pork. Many of you don't know this, but pork back then, um, if you weren't careful on cooking pork like back then, you pretty much could have a tapeworm, pinworms, and other types of parasites that will make you very, very sick and can really mess you up. Oop, my bad, my bad, my bad. Drop something. But yeah, when when I was reading those parts, I was like, it sounds like he's taking care of them like a father would. Like, hey, don't eat this meat. And a lot of people might think like, well, you could eat. Well, what about the other meat, like the cattle meat? And I'm like, most cattle meat are actually safe to eat. A lot of people don't know this, but you could literally eat beef raw, and you'll be fine. Yeah. But it seems like God knows exactly what's going on. Like he knows that the people of Israel, like they know what diseases are. They just don't understand that many diseases aren't just caused by a simple cold or a cough or a flu. They're caused by they're caused by disease. They're caused by parasites, viruses, bacteria that we don't even see yet. And here is God, the same God that a lot of people on TikTok like to complain that is an evil, horrible God. Like he right now, I mean, what is it? Chapter 11. He talks about the different types of animals that you can and cannot eat. Why? Because many people don't understand that some of these animals you cannot just eat like that. Yet they have to be specially prepared. And some of these animals actually have some vitamins that are high levels amounted that can kill people. And then in chapter 12, he talks about separating the mother from the baby. And people might think that this might be a bad thing, but a lot of people don't realize is that it's not that God wants them to be separated for good. It's most likely because when the birth process happens, the m- the mother and the baby the mother and the baby are in a vulnerable position, and you have to get the baby away from the mother so the viruses and the bacteria and all the other stuff that can harm the baby that may come from the mother may kill the baby. So, because remember back then you couldn't just sterilize the whole room. So yeah, it doesn't seem like God is evil in all this. And a lot of people might bring up like, well, does the babies always have like the immune system of the mother? Sure, yeah, they might be protected by the mother's immune system. But back then, it wasn't just it wasn't just like just that. It was diseases of other things in the area. I mean, the animals that they were going to be living close to. I mean, the amount of smallpox, chickenpox, and all these other diseases running rampant back then. Like, remember, they were next to farm animals. So these farm animals, if they get sick, yeah, that's why even God said, don't pick up the carcass of any of these animals that I have listed, because then you'll be unclean. And even in some of these cases, God literally tells them, go wash your hands. Wash your hands, wash your clothes, wash yourself, and wait until evening when you are clean. Because basically, God knew at that time that these people don't know what diseases are. They don't know what these things are. They don't understand what they are. All they want is the people to be clean. All God wanted to do is for them to be clean. And there you go. God did his mission right there. And I think there's still more later on in chapter 14. Yeah. Um I read the first part of the next part, and it looks like there's still more that God's telling them about cleaning themselves and keeping themselves clean. It's not because God is stopping them. It's because back then we didn't understand. We didn't understand these things. So, other than that, I'm gonna leave it there because I mean, what's much more to say then? I mean, what's more to say there? God is showing these people how to be clean. He's showing things that we will never understand until 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later, almost 2,000 years later, we finally discovered, yeah, thousands of years later. Actually, for them, I think this is, um, I want to say it's like 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. I may be wrong in that, but yeah, we will never know until 2,000 years later from them that they don't understand what diseases are, the parasites, the viruses, the bacteria, but God knew. God always knows. He knew. He told them what things should be done and how things should be done and yada yada yada. And he basically shows them how to actually be healthy and clean. He's not just showing them to be sort of like purified down to the bone. No, because the people of Israel back then didn't understand why God wouldn't allow them to eat pigs. Is because pigs need to be cooked at a certain temperature to get rid of all the pinworms, tapeworms, and all these other horrible diseases out there. But other than that, see you all in the next video. Bye bye.